Can you say hi? Can you say hi? Mm-hmm. Say hi. Say hello, people. Hello, lovely people of the internet, and welcome to the very first episode of the NovelTea Knitting Podcast. My name is Emma, and I'm your host, here to talk to you about all things knitting, bookish, basically anything cozy that takes my fancy. So grab a cup of tea, and let's get started. So for the first segment, it will make probably a bit more sense in future episodes where I have shown you some of my works in progress, and then we go into finished objects, and you can see, the progress that I've made. But I do have some finished objects that I finished like in the last week or two that I still want to show you, so I'm reaching over here as I'm talking because, yes, it's right here. It's a baby blanket. I have had to not knit, this is crochet. Of course the first thing I show you is going to be crochet. I have crocheted so many of these blankets in the last year or so just because I decided last year I found an old blanket that my grandmother had crocheted for me when I was a baby, and I had finally figured out the pattern. It was just a basic seashell stitch, and I had decided that I was going to crochet baby blankets for all the babies that were born in my family henceforth. And at the time, there were only, I think, 3 babies expected for the year. So I was like, oh, easy. Then everyone started having more children. So last year, and including this one, I've crocheted 8 so far, and I have 1 more to go. So I had 2 different cousins last year that had twins. Both of them had twins. And so that really bumped up the amount of crochet that I ended up having to do. But this is for my best friend and crafter in crime, Taylor. And her baby is not due for another couple of months. So I am quite ahead of the plan with that one, which is a nice change for me because I'm pretty sure that every single baby blanket last year went out at least a few weeks late, if not several months late. But they all got their baby blankets eventually. And then I just have 1 more to crochet this year for another cousin. Another thing that I have finished recently in droves has been slippers. Did I not leave it here? I don't remember what I did with them. This is a pair that I finished fairly recently. I have second to most recent pair. And these are really basic slippers. They're just, I think they're called the Simple House slippers. The pattern now, I think, is $5, $3. I can't remember. It's up on the screen, probably, maybe. I will definitely link to it in the description down below. But I have had this pattern memorized for years now because at one time I was under the very false impression that I was going to be able to knit these for my entire extended family. I'm mostly on my mom's side just because it was something that my great-grandmother used to do, is she would crochet slippers for everyone in the family every Christmas. Everyone in the family, all of her grandkids, all of her great-grandkids, just everybody got slippers. And I tried to do that, and I did do that 1 year where, at the very least, all of my aunts and uncles got a pair of slippers, and everyone in my immediate family. But it was a lot of work. I think I knitted 19 pairs of slippers. I have a very big family. So I scaled back, and for the last couple of years, I've only been doing it for my immediate family. However, my immediate family has grown recently, got married. So my immediate family now includes all of my in-laws as well, which Again, it's not too big of a jump. I just have a brother-in-law and then both of my parents-in-law, but then also my husband and my parents and my brother. So it's still a lot, but I was running super, super late on knitting them last year. I think I tried to knit 7 pairs of slippers in a single week, which for some people might be possible, but I am not that fast of a knitter. So by Christmas Eve, which was my hard deadline, I had knit slippers for everybody else in my family except for myself. And I just had a pair, like I still opened a pair, but they were just an old pair of slippers that I had made the year prior. And in the past, I have knit solid slippers, so just one solid color, both slippers. But this year, because I crocheted so many baby blankets, I also had a ton of the yarn that I use, which is the Knit Picks Brava worsted. I just had a ton of it. So much Brava worsted left over. Not really enough to do, definitely not enough to do 2 slippers in the same color. Some of it might have been enough to do 1 slipper in one color and then crochet like the next one in different colors, but I wanted to have at least a little bit of continuity. Like in this one, you can see I've got like the navy blue and the cream and the light blue, cream, navy blue, and then just bright yellow, because why not? So I've just been using scraps. What that boils down to is I've just been using scraps. And this is the one that I finished most recently, and then I just have 1 single slipper left. I'm on the cuff right now, and I will easily be able to finish 1 slipper by the end of today, and I will be done with this project. I wanted to just get everything done before Christmas, well before Christmas this year, so that I could like have some breathing room. And then I was thinking about it, and I decided to set myself the deadline of the end of February. So assuming this gets done today or within the next week, I will have met that deadline, and I'm very proud of myself for that. So my last one was kind of a finished objects, works in progress, but by the time this gets posted, that will definitely be a finished object. So moving on to whips. I have this sock, which really should be considered a languishing whip, except that I am determined to work on this just as soon as I finish those slippers. That was one reason that I wanted to get those done by the end of February, was so that I could focus on some personal knitting. I really wanted to have as much gift knitting done as I could well in advance, so that I could have the rest of the year to knit for myself. Because I am a selfish knitter at heart. I just also have a few people that I love dearly enough that I like to knit or crochet them things as well. So these socks I cast on in June last year, and they have sat on these needles for most of that time. So what happened, the reason that they've been languishing, is because I had wanted to design a pattern for them myself, and I was planning on creating a pattern based on Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a children's TV show, if you don't know, and in it they have 4 nations. They have the Air Nomads, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, Water Tribe. So these I was going to knit into a pattern for Water Tribe socks. I have the pattern completely designed. I know exactly what I want it to be, but the more I looked at this yarn, the less I liked it for that project, just because the Water Tribe do have very specific colors. Like I was thinking about using this yarn because it's very reminiscent of water to me. Like it just looks like beautiful lake inlet water. So I bought it at a local yarn store, but the dyer is from Ireland, and it is a name that I'm going to butcher, but it's Camarog Yarns and Fibers. This colorway is called Whiting Bay. So there's the actual tag for you, and I will put the information somewhere on the screen as well. Whiting Bay, obviously it is definitely water inspired, but it just doesn't match with what the Water Tribe colors actually are. And so I decided that I was gonna get a yarn that was closer to those colors. Maybe what I will probably end up doing is asking for a custom dye job from some indie dyer. So this languished because I didn't want to take it out and have to reknit the cuff, because I am not a huge ribbing fan. Like, I love ribbing and the way that it looks in knitting. I don't love knitting ribbing. So I just left it on the needles, and I happened to have another set of this size, and I just moved on to another project. But I recently made another new pattern that I am temporarily calling Raindrops. I am not entirely positive what it's going to turn out to look like, but I'm quite excited for it. So I will keep you posted on that. My other main whip right now is being kept in this absolutely gorgeous twill and print bag, which was a birthday gift from my husband. It has suffered just a little bit of damage because all of the leather straps, well, let's just say that we got a new puppy and she was teething. And apparently leather makes a really nice chew toy when you're teething. So that's a lesson learned. She, I would like to say, has settled down since then. But I couldn't say that without lying. I'd be lying. So what I am working on, oh, it's such a tangled mess right now. I am working on the Schnee cardigan. I do not remember the name of the designer, but it'll be up here somewhere. The Schnee is a top-down cardigan knit in DK weight. I finished the back piece and then the front right piece, and I have just recently cast on the front left piece. This is a cardigan that I am kind of doing a knit along with my knitting club for. We're all knitting cardigans, but I chose a different pattern from the rest of my knitting club just because I am extremely particular about the clothes that I wear. This is probably going to come up eventually anyway, so I might as well just get to it now. I have an anxiety disorder, and it manifests for me in very tactile ways. It is the one way that no amount of medication seems to have helped solve, whereas a lot of my anxiety I've gotten under control. This is just one thing that I can't tolerate. So, I can't have anything that is close up under my arm, which is why you will probably always see me in large, baggy, oversized sweaters, hoodies, tank tops, just anything that gives me lots of room under my arms. So, everyone else is knitting a much more form-fitting cardigan, and I found the Schnee pattern and just fell in love. Oh, the pictures on the pattern are just to die for. They're so beautiful. And just cozy. Cozy is a key word for me, you'll find. If something is cozy, it immediately has my attention. So I mentioned that this cardigan is knit in DK, and I am actually holding, to achieve a DK weight, I am holding 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn together to get approximately a DK weight. This is Bumblebee Acres in their A Ride Through the Highlands. I'm very proud of myself for remembering that. In their A Ride Through the Highlands colorway. If you have never shopped at Bumblebee Acres, they're a independent dyer. They, I think, are based in Wisconsin. I'm pretty sure it's Wisconsin. I'll find out if I'm wrong, and I will correct myself. They are one of my absolute favorites. I get an advent calendar from them every year, and I don't think they have dyed a single color that I didn't love. So that's over 100 different colorways, and I've loved every single one of them. So I highly recommend them. They will be linked down below. I am really looking forward to getting some proper progress in on this, not only because I am honestly genuinely loving the pattern and seeing how it's growing and seeing the interesting methods of construction, but also because I really want to cast on another sweater. And I definitely can't quite justify that. I definitely have the yarn to do so. And I have several patterns in the wings that I have specific yarn for. I want to at least get the the front pieces done so that I can attach everything, and get going on straight on the body. So that is it for whips. I do have a couple other things that are technically works in progress, like a scrappy blanket, but that has been a work in progress now for going on 4 years. So if I ever do work on it, I will make sure to show you guys, but it is something that I just haven't had time to work on lately. It has gotten big enough that it is unwieldy, and so I don't take it out very often, but I really do want to. So I will show you guys that another time. But that is pretty much it for knitting content. If that's what you're here for, then I hope you enjoyed this very first episode, and I'm so happy to have had you. I will be uploading on a bi-weekly schedule, so you can expect another video in 2 weeks. The next section is going to be reading content, books, all the books that I've been reading. So if you're not here for that, again, thank you so much for joining us, and on to the next section. Books. Oh my gosh, books. Okay, we're going to start by talking about what I finished reading recently. The first thing at the top of the list is the entire Bridgerton series. So it's an 8-book series by Julia Quinn. And if you've been living under a rock and you didn't know, Bridgerton is also a Netflix original TV show now. I saw that it was a TV show based on books that I had been planning on reading. They had actually been on my to-read list for a while, or at least Julia Quinn was. And I decided that I wanted to read the books before I watched the TV show, just in case the TV show spoiled anything. Because the first series is supposed to be based on just the first book. But because of the way that it's produced, I know that there are lots of parts of it that you have to just manipulate. Because the books take place over, I think, a 15 to 20 year period. So between the first book, in which Daphne gets married, and the very last book, in which Gregory gets married, all of the other siblings get married as well, but unlike some series that I've read where just everyone in the family seems to get married all at once, like 1 month after another, basically, Julia Quinn spaced things out quite a lot. So everyone in the books ages up throughout the series, and it's definitely a benefit to the book. It makes for really interesting storytelling. I love the aspect, this is quite common in historical romance novels, where they take a series and they base it around like a certain group of people and each one of them falling in love with someone. A lot of times it's a family. And so having this family of 8 children, all of them named alphabetically, was just really fun. Seeing their closeness and seeing how their expanding families impacted the rest of their immediate family. It was beautifully written, very well done, extremely well carried over. All of the books made sense in the timeline, like, so well. It was just so well done. But yeah, I really loved the series, and I am actually really nervous now to watch the TV show because I'm worried that it's not going to do justice to these characters that I love so much. I mean, that was my first mistake. I probably shouldn't have read the books if I didn't want to be annoyed with the TV show. So, leaving that aside, the other book series that I have finished reading recently was 2 book series by Riordan. I read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is a 5-book series, and then the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, which is, it's a similar premise. So in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Percy Jackson is the son of Poseidon, and he goes to a camp for half-bloods, for demigods, and everyone in the camp is also a demigod, and he has to go on quests and save the world and all of this. And Magnus Chase is a similar thing, but rather than Greek gods, it's Norse gods. I actually read the Magnus Chase books as a kind of book club with my little brother. I say little brother, but he's bigger than me. And honestly, he probably looks older than me at this point, but he will always be my little brother. And this genre of children's fantasy, like young adult or children's fantasy, is just about the only thing that we really properly agree on when it comes to reading. My brother really loves world building, which Riordan is really good at, but I love characters. So your world building can be questionable as long as you have good characters for me. And so we tried to read a couple of books that I thought my brother would like at first. Things that were very intense novels, very fantasy-centric, very, like, they were set on their own worlds, whereas Percy Jackson is set on Earth, just as if the Greek gods exist. It has worked out to be a very nice middle ground because I just don't do intense. I read for entertainment, I read for relaxation. I always read fluff. If something turns out to be quite dark, I will quite often put it down, or I will think about it for so long that it actually starts to cause me anxiety. And so I just don't read books like that. To each person their own, of course, and I will never begrudge anyone who likes really dark fiction or horror or thrillers or anything like that. Everyone should read whatever they want to read. It's just not for me. Don't try and convince me that, oh, if I only read this one really deep, dramatic book that is all about passion, but the ending is just so tragic. No. I want my HEA. Every book series that I read has to have a happily ever after. Anyway, so I finished Magnus Chase and I finished Percy Jackson, and I love them. I highly, highly recommend, if you are even sort of interested in fantasy, to give Percy Jackson a try. I know that they're technically for children, but I have found them always to be entertaining. You do have to get over sometimes a few like silly jokes, but the world building is really good, and the like through lines, the things that like crop up in the beginning, the Chekhov's guns, I suppose you can say, the things that show up in the beginning that like you think, I wonder if that's going to be important. It ends up being important, and everything always comes through in the end, and it's just a really fun thing to read. Also, if you have kids, I highly recommend that you read these with kids. I would definitely say middle grade at least. They do have some violence in them, but I've just fallen in love with them. I've started buying up all of the Rick Riordan books so that when I do eventually have children, I can't wait to read these books to them. So let's move on to what I am currently reading. If you are the type of person that just cannot handle the idea of someone reading multiple books at once, you might want to get out of here. I am the type of person that will read 3 or 4 books at once, all from different series, different genres. I typically have an audiobook that I'm listening to. I will have a physical book that I'm reading. I will have a book on my Kindle, and I will have a manga series that I'm reading. Sometimes I will be reading a book where I'm just kind of struggling to get through a section, and so I will say to myself, okay, just read 1 or 2 chapters of this today, and then you can go on to reading what you actually want to read. And I also get through my audiobooks way faster than I get through anything that I am reading physically. I am right now actually reading 2 books on my Kindle, and I'm listening to a 3rd. Oh, and then I'm also reading 1 physical book as well. Let's start with the ongoing theme of Rick Riordan, because I am reading the next series in the Percy Jackson storyline, basically. It is the Heroes of Olympus, and I am on the 3rd book of the Heroes of Olympus, which is The Mark of Athena. I actually just started it today, and I'm listening to it on audiobook. I'm trying to get through all of the series so that I can read the most recent Percy Jackson series, which the very last volume was published, I think, last year. There's 5 books in Percy Jackson, 5 books in the Heroes of Olympus, 5 books in the next series as well, which is something to do with Apollo. I want to get to that series so that I can read it with my brother. So the Heroes of Olympus is doing something really interesting that the first Percy Jackson series did not do, and Magnus Chase did not do either. Both those books were written from the perspective of one main character, Percy Jackson and Magnus Chase. This series is written from the perspective of 7 different heroes. So it's kind of a lot. It does ease you into it because the first book is from the perspective of 3 of the heroes, and then the second one is from another 3 heroes, and then it's not until the third one that you get all 7 of them together. Again, it eases you into this idea, and you are very attached to all of the characters, so when it starts doing things from their perspective, you feel connected to them. You have your favorites. I really love anytime it's written from my OG Percy. Anytime it's written from his perspective, that's usually my favorite. It's really interesting right now, and you can feel a lot of, I don't think this is spoilery, but you can feel a lot of the tension in the group, and there's tension for a good reason. That is something that I don't think that could have been conveyed nearly as well if it weren't for this writing from so many varying perspectives. The other thing that I am reading right now that is an offshoot from what I discussed that I finished recently is Splendid by Julia Quinn. It is the first book that Julia Quinn ever wrote. I had decided that I was going to read every single Julia Quinn book that she's published, starting in chronological order, not counting Bridgerton, which is somewhere in the middle. I'm starting with Splendid, and I will say her writing gets a lot better. I've only gotten a couple chapters into Splendid, but it is very clear to me that her writing has improved significantly between the time that she wrote Splendid and the time that she wrote Bridgerton, which is good. It's expected. It makes sense because there's, I think, like something like a 20-year gap, 15 to 20-year gap between the two. Your writing is going to get better. I'm still finding it interesting to read. She writes such good characters, such compelling characters. I am also reading A Gilded Cage on my Kindle. It's a Kindle Unlimited book. I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. Hate giving Amazon all that money, but it is fair, I suppose, because I do find a lot of books that I quite like on Kindle Unlimited. Anyway, this one is by Auburn Tempest, and it is not good. It's not good. The premise is really good. It's very compelling. It's this girl who has grown up in Toronto, I think it is, and she finds out that she has a magical background, and she knows that her whole family, or her dad's side of the family, is from Ireland, and that they broke ties, but she doesn't know why. Her grandfather reaches out to her, and she ends up flying to Ireland and meeting her grandparents. It's this whole magical thing, and it's interesting, I suppose. I think that so much of the story could be fleshed out better. There are several different things that keep happening where I'm like, that could have been a book by itself. And it was like 3 chapters. It just feels like there are some concepts that, like, they're very cool, but they could be such big adventures if you weren't trying to be so clever and snarky all the time. There was a character recently that was related to the main character, and he died. And it was very sad and everything, but the way they handled the death was so weird, and it was, I guess, just a reason to get her to go back to Toronto, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but it's not good. I don't know why I'm insisting on finishing it. I did this earlier this year as well, where I finished a book called Dragons Don't Eat Meat. It was also not good. but I had started it, and I mean, I knew from like chapter 2 that it wasn't good, but I was determined to finish it, not because I thought it would get better, just because I wanted to know how it ended. I would say that these two books have probably the same problem, where there's a lot of things that happen too quickly. Like, I don't feel like I'm given the details or enough time to breathe or enough time to like really get to know these characters and how they handle these situations before we're on to something new, which is very frustrating. And then finally, the other book that I am reading is also a Kindle Unlimited book. No, not a Kindle Unlimited book. It is a Kindle book that I purchased myself. So this is a book, it's another romance novel, but it's a modern romance, and it is something that I've actually been reading, a series I've been reading with my mom. I connect with my family a lot through reading. It is called The Northern Lights Lodge by Julie Caplin, and it is the fourth book. It's the fourth book in this series, which are just like these sweet romance novels that just take place in different cities all over the world. So the very first one was in Denmark. I'm pretty sure it was in Denmark, and then we got one in America, and then France, and then this one is taking place in Iceland. It is a very, very fluffy read. Again, I would not say it's a good book, but it is better than A Gilded Cage. It's just that the conflict is so contrived. This is such a pet peeve of mine. The conflict is entirely based on the fact that the two main characters don't just communicate. Like, it's one thing, like, sometimes this makes sense. So this is, I mean, like, it's a very, very common trope in romance where they just don't tell each other things, and everything could be solved if they had a single conversation. And it wasn't that Julia Quinn didn't do this, but the reasons behind why the main characters didn't tell each other things made sense. They don't make sense in this romance novel. Just talk to each other. But I think that's where I'm gonna leave it. Just with that outrage. Just talk to each other. Also, you, watcher, just talk to each other. If you're having problems with a significant other, just talk to them. Friends, just talk to them. Just talk. Communication is so important. I'm giving relationship advice now, because I'm so qualified for that. But I am going to end it here. If you liked this video, please give it a like. Shoot me a comment if you've got anything to say, if you want to tell me what your favorite romance novels are, or your biggest pet peeves in any kind of literature. Please let me know down below. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks.